You remember that they're changing my voice. Before I begin this video about the females who um, rejected me in grade school and junior high and high school, and I've gone over this in my story playlist before. I'm doing this as an impromptu speech. Basically, all the speeches on this playlist are impromptu, meaning there's just some notes at times, a lot of times just off the top of my head, what have you. I'd like to remind you that there's people who are more fair than other people, right? From every group and every race. So, starting with pre-kindergarten, right? There was a female named Nicole that I had a crush on. I bought her some kind of stuffed animal. I was too nervous to ever talk to her. I knew that I was never going to see her again. And so I never tried, right? And so that made me sad. Going into grade school, there was a female named Stephanie that had blonde hair. Everyone had a crush on her. At some point, maybe it was because everyone liked her and I thought Sarah was attractive too. At some point, I really started being drawn to Sarah. And keep in mind, there's mind control technologies out there. Okay, the facts show us this. I've reviewed the facts several times, the patents. I've reviewed the timeline. I've reviewed it with my experiences. I've asked other people. And in my research, I've found that, yes, they've had the ability to interfere with people's emotions and moods for quite some time. At least by the early 80s, by 84 or so, they were implanting thoughts and voices in people's heads and so on and so forth, right? Sometimes it's schizophrenia, and sometimes it was them. And I think most of the people who had those experiences just assumed that their mind was playing tricks on them because it wasn't consistent with the pattern of mental illness. It was just experiences here and there. Okay, so, I had a crush on Sarah, who was the little sister, my brother's best friend at some point. I used to wrestle him and his friend, right? It was Alex, and he had a friend named Nick, and eventually he becomes friends with my older brother. And, I used to wrestle with Nick, and I'd win, and so on and so forth. Okay, even though I was in 2 grades below him. Now, and again, I don't care who used to win at wrestling as a little kids, right? But, okay. So, in junior high, eventually I have a crush on a female named Kristen. Now, Sarah is like playing me out, right? She's saying, ew, and there's people, and I can't remember if it was her or not, but there was other people saying things like, ew, a black guy. And then she's, well, I didn't mean it like that, right? They'd say things like this, okay? So in junior high, there was Kristen, and she first dated my friend Chris. His last name was Corona, right? And that's not a coincidence because the coronavirus. And Kristen is like Christ, right? Kristen, I'm going to go ahead and say her last name. I don't want to put her on blast, but it's significant. Dave Eyes. So advise, Dave Eyes, Davis, right? Kristen Davis. And the word Davis is like the word David, who was another one of my friends in junior high. Okay, and his last name is a play on words for seal in gear. And there was some other people with names that were significant, but we're just going to stick to this kind of stuff here for now. So my friend Chris told me, because he had dated her, he knew her better than I knew her. He said, just write her a note if you're shy. You just write her a note. She won't care. Trust me, I know her. She won't care. So I write her a note. And in the middle of class, she says, she says, oh my gosh. Okay, it's strange because of all the days the teacher randomly chose to take a break in the middle of class. It never happened. Okay, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." I think that what had happened is she started showing signs that she's worked up, and she's like, "Okay, let's take a break, right?" And so she goes to the females, bathroom and locker room, whatever, with the rest of the females, basically, and she's saying, "No, this guy wrote me this. No, my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. What am I gonna do? Da 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 da." And so she eventually rejects me. And she says something where I hear it, or she said it to me. She said, if you would have asked me in person, I would have said yes. Okay? That's ridiculous, right? So I'm penalized for being shy and because that took a lot of guts to write that note, mind you. Now, for someone who's shy and different than everyone, I'm the only black guy in the class. Okay, my father's from Nigeria. I'm different from everyone else, what have you. Now, I forgot to mention I used to go to a school called Carden. I was in country school, in a school called Carden, where, and you see draw, see, and draw kin, draw can, and there's all kinds, can draw, there's all kinds of wordplay there. But at that school, there was a Jewish kid I don't remember his name. He had black hair. The teachers there, some were very strict. It was in one of the stricter teachers' classes. And he had said, that you'll only get fat black girls in your life. He said, watch, you only get fat girls and fat black girls. He said, just remember fat black girls. And over the course of my life, I didn't remember that, but I dated some plus-size females that I wasn't happy with. And that is, it shows that there was a concerted effort to kind of plant women. And I'm sure most people see these days that dating is very controlled. There's a bunch of people in political groups, left, right, middle, fringe politic groups, sex cults, social clubs, secret societies, sororities, frats. I mean, if you just do the math of what everyone has acknowledged, dating is extremely controlled. And then we read between the lines and we see beyond that, and we kind of estimate who's in what group, and you see it's extremely controlled, these witch groups and so on and so forth. They're counseling the cultures that make it harder for them to control who dates who, especially. That's one of the reasons they do that. So there was that, right? And so then there's the Kristen incident. And during that time in junior high, I was at summer school. The first time I went there, right, I went to summer school downtown San Jose several times. Okay, kind of public summer school. There was a female who was black named Tamika. Her name was like mine, right? And she basically not only was never going to date me, she went as far as to insult me. She singled me out and was like, this guy here, and because I didn't seem so kind of poor as the other kids or something, I don't know what it was probably that she, I don't remember what she said or did, but I remember she gave me a hard time, and she resembled Chili from TLC, the group, the entertainment group, the singing, they sing and so on and so forth. So Kimmy was also this Asian female, looked like maybe she was part Jewish, part Asian. She went to a school not far from mine named Bret Hart, and her parents owned a Chinese restaurant. She brought the teacher Chinese food and so on and so forth. I don't want to say she was flirting with me, but she took the time to talk to me in a way that suggested maybe I have a chance with her. So I went out on a limb, because we all exchanged numbers at the end, and I called her, and I had a friend named John. He was Chinese. I said, John has a crush on you and wants me to talk to you. He said, why doesn't he talk to me himself? Right? And she eventually saw through it, and she basically, just plays me out hard. It doesn't give me a chance. And again, I'm being penalized for being shy. Okay? Now, some people might say, you can't do that, but that's hogwash. Okay? Some females like a guy that's shy. Some females understand. Some females are dumb, groupie-ass bitches. So they tend to try to put every female in the category of a dumb, groupie bitch who's not going to understand why you did that and then play you out. And there's also implications on social order. Okay? Just like with Sarah, her family was wealthy, right? Probably wealthier than mine, at the time, right? And certainly now. With Kimmy, her parents owned that restaurant, right? And it was like a 5-star restaurant, or it's some high-end Chinese restaurant, one of the more expensive and elegant Chinese restaurants in Santa Clara County, really, not just San Jose. And, so it suggested that she had the higher social class. So here I am, a brain surgeon's son, the son of 2 doctors, and these people who have less moral class, their families have less moral class, no offense to anybody, were kind of looking at it in a certain way that they were like, I'm not interested in you. Instead, I'm a star basketball player, I'm smart, I'm starting to be universally handsome. At that point, I wasn't that handsome, right? So that's part of the problem there. But a huge part of the problem where they didn't even want anything to do with me had to do with, racism against black people. Because again, this is, there's a thin line between the 60s, 70s, and 80s in many ways, and early 90s, okay? So there's still, just like there is now, there's still a lot of racism against black people, and people who aren't necessarily racist against black people themselves, it rubs off on them, and they know other people are, and they know it affects their conception of, so I was saying before this biker drove by, that it affects their conception of class, right? So if you're from an all-white neighborhood in some city or something, and it's an upscale neighborhood, you're not going to want to date a black guy as the general rule of thumb. That's how they treated it, right? That's their mentality. That's their attitude. You know what I'm saying? You should say, hey, fuck what you think. Romeo and Juliet, fuck what you think. I'm not racist. Martin Luther King, Jesus in the Bible, on and on. Jesus in real life, me, mulatto. But they don't see it that way. And there's a concerted effort to keep black people from looking presentable. because it has to do with who has a lethal grace for authority, right? Who has a kind of natural grace, like a leopard's grace, not necessarily going around killing people or something, but this intense, deserve to be in charge kind of nature makes it so black people are going to emerge out on top like they did in Egypt, okay, for the longest. And these people came back with armor. That's unnatural. So who has a natural grace for being in charge when everything's equal, and who doesn't, that factors in. There's a lot of things that factor in. So now this takes us to I have to do this video in two parts. I was going to explain why people are wrong about their dating, but it's going to take too long. So let's just shoot through this. So there's Shalini and her sister. When I went to Webb in Southern California boarding school, I had to score high on the SSAT to get there, top 1 percentile, what have you. So those Shalini, her sister Amy, I had a crush on both of them at different points. After Shalini rejects me, she's like, you went after my sister, or, you tried to holler at my sister, or, you tried to date my sister, okay? And she ended up dating some guy from South Central, wasn't very attractive, and so on and so forth. And I don't care about money, so on and so forth. I look at the sum total romantic appeal of someone and say, why did this happen, right? That's the scientific way to approach it. There was also an island female there, maybe she was Filipino or something, where, this one gay guy tried to take advantage of me, and it was because of the mind control of the state, right? It didn't work. I'm not gay. I'll never be gay. And he was friends with her or something, and I wanted, and I ended up I wanted to talk to her, right? And I ended up, using the school director or something after I left, and I called the dorm, and at first she was like, not tripping. No, I understand. No, she understands, da-da-da-da-da. The next time, she's like, fuck you, keep calling me for it. And she was like, go ahead and call me later. No, I got to go right now. And she was all diplomatic. The next time, she was like, very rude about it, okay? And again, see this lack of judgment, right? Let's have an understanding. Let's have a universal scale. It just doesn't happen. And so they're rejecting Jesus left and right because they're a dumb, poorly raised idiot. And that eventually leads us to, Live Oak and Morgan Hill with Maria Mello. I've told that story many times. Her name was even Mello. It's what have mellowed me out instead of driving me to extreme anger. By the time I was 17 years old, I was an extremely, extremely angry person, okay, for a good reason. And it's more than just the females. It's society. It's the bad grades. It's getting in trouble with my parents. It's people, having gang members having kind of, walked up to me and, asked me where I'm from. It's called, quote unquote, hitting someone up. So, and it's not a coincidence, hit someone up, right? I'm the someone going up, the alpha, the one, the A. Okay. There's also another female named Leanna. Okay, Maria, okay, oh man, we'll go ahead and tell this story again. Okay, basically, I had seen her the first year I got there, I believe, as a sophomore. Yeah, as a sophomore. And I saw her, and it was like this moment that was set up by the state or something. By then, the state had the technology to absolutely set it up to that degree. So I see this female walking, and she's the class president. She's dressed a certain way. She has a Starbucks cup. She has like a leather jacket and a dress or something like that. And she's walking, and she has this sexy body, but the body doesn't even call me to her. It drew me, what drew me to her was like something about her. So I never looked at her sexually, even though she probably had the best body in the school, right? I never looked at it that way, and it always kind of confused me. I spent years trying to understand why that is, because, like a lot of high school kids, I was, inclined to be sexual and what have you. In the next year, so that year I saw her walking around, and she had a boyfriend that looked like the character Wheeze from The Devil and Daniel Mouse. Okay, he was like a Mexican person. I seen later on some guys who were members of the Sereno gang that look like they're in their family. They do a lot of doppelganger and family kind of stalking, okay? And, one of them was friends with a guy who was one of my brother's friends named Paul, who claimed to know a guy that, ended up marrying Maria or whatever, right? And so he's an asshole of sorts, and he kind of upholds the state and so on and so forth, right? And so, he didn't understand the situation. He didn't understand why I was inquiring about her, and he's quick to act like an asshole and think it's smart. It's like Bebop and Rocksteady. You think he's a dumbass. Okay. So anyway, I hate to put him on blast like that, but, everyone needs to know that when you treat people unfairly, and someone is the most righteous person that ever lived, you should be called names. Absolutely. That's the most righteous person ever. That's Jesus that you kind of try to bully on behalf of the neo-Roman state, right? So should he be called names? Yes. Okay. And same with these females. Should they be called names for rejecting me? Yes. I mean, how dumb can you be, man? There's nothing dumber for a female to do, so to speak, than to reject Jesus, right? Say, you need Jesus. Okay, you keep thinking you need love from these guys. No, you need Jesus. And then you reject them romantically too. Just fucking retarded. So anyway, I see her the next year in my class, right? I'm at Live Oak. She's in my physics class of all classes. Okay, and I can't remember the timeline there, but the teacher was a patient of my father's, and my father had worked on his back and so on and so forth, right? And it's a physics class, and he was a bodybuilder. He had injured himself working out. There's a lot of parallels there, right? They plant people in certain situations like Masonic plays to tell a story, and they want you to infer certain things from the story. They're implying certain things. It's a jigsaw puzzle game. They play the checkered floor of masonry, what have you. So during that time, and again, later on, I get in a car accident and I injure my back, maybe like less than a year after that, or a year or two after that, something like that, right? Doing 100 miles an hour, I'm right in the back seat, long story, right? But anyway, so for whatever reason, because I came in later in the year and I wasn't so used to the program there, and I smoked a lot of weed at the time. So there was some kind of bell system. I guess the first bell was for people who were meeting in the office or something. And I think what had happened is sometimes they released us on the first bail or something like that. Some mishap, or maybe he released us early and said, go ahead and leave on the first bail or something. So when the first bell went, a lot of times I'd be standing at the end of the class. She would walk out, and I'd be lined up at the door, and she'd be standing behind me. And I thought that, that we were just lined up to leave or something. I'm like, she's doing it too. Why did she? And then one time I think she said, excuse me, and she passed me, right? And I'm like, man, what the fuck is going on here? Right? You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to understand that. So, it happened like more than once. I must have been high. I don't know what the issue with that was. Okay? Very strange. But I don't think that she held that against me too much, right? Because when I eventually started going, I was at home, I'm smoking weed, my heart's broken. I'm trying to think, hey, how can I approach this female, so on and so forth. So I decided to myself, I said, look, tomorrow when I go to school, no matter what happens, I'm going to smoke a lot of weed in the morning, and I'm going to, just approach this person. By the time I get to class, I'm going to be sober, right? But I'm going to kind of take off that edge in the morning, and then I'm just going to, when I'm walking out of class, I had a plan. I'm going to turn around, I'm going to walk right up to her, and I'm going to put out my hand and say, this is who I am. And anyone watching, okay, I can always beat their ass later, if they give me a hard time about it. So the next day comes, right? And we get released. I guess this day she left with the rest of the class. So I guess it was just some days that they met in the office or whatever, right? So I'm walking out ahead of her, right? Maybe I was quicker to pack up my things. Maybe I wasn't. So the whole class is leaving, and I stop. I turn around. I walk right up to her. She's walking with her little blonde-haired friend, right, who's a white social norm fanatic. And I reach out my hand, and I say, hey, how you doing? I say, hey, hello, my name is Emika, so on and so forth. This chick, acts very awkward, very nervous. Like, what's going on? Why aren't you shaking anyone else's hand? Like, bitch, shut the fuck up, first of all. If I was there, if I was to look back, if I would go back in time, bitch, shut the fuck up, and tell that little blonde slut to shut the fuck up, too. With that bullshit. That's Jesus. Fucking submit. I'd go as far as to say that. Because when you look back at the deeper implication of this, my goodness, her rejecting me the way she did, her family, the way they treated me, except for her mother, was cool. It's a story for another day. But maybe we'll get into that. It literally almost killed me at various points in life because I would spin out of control with a broken heart. Okay? So it's fucking infuriating that I manned up to that degree. I never even heard of anyone in my life man up in regards to trying to date a female in human history as much as I turned around and as a very shy, the most shy person in the school, most different everything. And I walked right up to her, like a man, and took out my hand. So anyway, the train just went by. We get quite a few of these interruptions as I try to park places where I can tell the story as I'm being fumed and poisoned, and I'm trying to time out. I'm trying to time a point where I can kind of tell the story. So anyway, eventually we start talking. I start trying to explain things to her, and for some reason she brings up a friend that she has in Seattle or something. And I say, my older brother is going to boarding school in Seattle. And I say, his name is Uche. And she's like, Uchi. She couldn't say it for the life. Say, Uche, right? She said, Uchi. I'm like, okay, whatever. Just, we'll leave that for later. Okay. And I try to get her number. And she doesn't give me her number. But she lets me walk with her to her locker. Okay. Which was a very awkward walk. So here she's walking with Jesus. And I'm like, man, it's weird, right? But to some degree, I had some sense of triumph. Because I had walked with her, like, I manned up, I'm walking with her, walker. All you people from another race with your racial, because most people were, all the racial groups were like segregated like it's fucking county jail or prison or something. So they can all see me, hey, I don't give a fuck about your racial barriers. Not just because I'm a mulatto, it's stupid, it's shallow, that's some bitch shit. Some other people felt the same way as me, but it's dumb. And you all with your little cultural groups, your little racial groups, your worldly groups, your gossip. Okay, I'm doing this. You see what I'm saying? Though it wasn't going to work out, but I still triumphed to some degree. I manned up more than anyone ever did in the history of mankind kind of thing in high school. And I, crossed those racial barriers and fuck them. Just like my parents, right? They got married at a time when it was very racial. And they were like met in the 60s or somewhere. When, they met, no, not the 60s, like the 70s, right? And then, my mom had to drop out of medical school because of your racist, one race, conservative minded, whether it's Democratic, Republican society, that said they don't give a shit that she is a good woman. They don't care that, my dad is the father of Jesus. They don't care about none of that. They said, hey, if you're going to have a black guy's baby, you're going to have to leave medical school. That's the story that was told to me. And I do believe it's true. It was Detroit, very racist, Detroit, Michigan, where my dad came into Michigan. Okay, what have you. Bitch ass shit. So anyway, okay, am I going to let the greatest love story die like that? Okay, am I? No, fuck that shit. So what did I do? I looked her name up in the phone book, and yes, I would do it again. Fuck her dad, fuck the fucking gossiping bitches at the school, fuck every bitch ass motherfucker, that one kid who may look Italian or something, fuck that bitch ass motherfucker. Oh, fucking Jesus will do what the fuck he sees fit. If I want to fucking visit Maria, I will do that. If I want to visit the fucking, I'm Jesus. Okay? Who the fuck are you to tell me otherwise? And I'm the most righteous person ever. Why didn't your blind, senseless punk ass see it in me? You stupid fuck. Like I gotta explain. This raised horribly a dog. Anyway. So, I look it up. Okay? I met countless females that will look a motherfucker name up in the phone book and try to hook their friend up, who will look it up and say, oh, okay, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. They will do that. Because of her indecisiveness, I fucking did that. And so when I call the first time, she's not there, and she's like, oh, she's somewhere else, da-da-da, why, what's this about? No one's supposed to be calling her. I say, I'm in her physics class, and they have some kind of assignment, so on and so forth. Yeah, I made up some shit. So I want to have my chance to talk to the females and love. Does anyone have a problem with that? I wanted to pursue that love at first sight. You see what I'm saying? You see why I feel the need to say that right now? The way I did? Do you understand the situation? Okay. Put in the comments if you don't understand. If you disagree and say, hey, what the fuck were you doing, man? Hey, man, you're stalking her or something. Why are you looking her name up? You want to be a bitch? Put in the comments. Let's discuss it. Go point by point. Okay. So, again, remember her name was Mello. Even her name Maria is after the Virgin fucking Mary, and I'm Jesus. What the fuck? What the fuck, right? Okay. So, I call back later that night. Boy, it goes fucking south. She's not hearing me for a fucking at all. Then I call back another night. And her mom's like, oh man, her dad's pissed and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. For whatever reason, she's so cool. And she knows, like I'm pretty sure she knows that I'm in love with her daughter and she's trying to be fair. Okay, and she probably caught wind that my dad's a doctor and she'd probably like, hey, don't fucking let him talk to her, okay? A doctor's son gonna fucking kill her or something? What the fuck are you afraid of, right? So, yep. So she gets on the phone, man, and I have this poem written. For the life, I choked like you wouldn't believe. First, I had to convince her to let me read the poem. I'm like, look, you're spending longer, and taking you longer to say I don't want to talk to you. Maybe not really I don't want to talk to you, but kind of indecisive things. I don't know. Maybe if we were in the same group together, I don't know. Maybe if this is saying shit like this, right? Beating around the bush. I'm like, fucking, eventually I convinced her, not being mean and rude at all, to let me read the poem. and I fucking choke on the fucking poem. Probably because of big fucking brother sucking a technology geek, Ebert dweeb ass dick. Snickering in the background or something. You can imagine, because that's a distinct possibility, and people who work for them have told me that that's what happened, that I'm not very pleased about that. Would you be pleased? You should be mad for me. Okay. So, eventually, that goes south. We hang up. She's like, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. She says it like in a way like she's being held fucking hostage or something. Not by me, by like her parents. And so what ends up happening is her dad gets I guess he got the number off the caller ID or something. He calls my dad, okay, and asks to speak to my father. And I'm not there, I wasn't there when they called, right? Okay. Oh, no, excuse me. I wasn't there to pick up the phone. I was there at the house. Okay. And so my dad picks up the phone, boop, boop, doop, whoop. He fucking is like, oh, what the hell's going on? He's mad at me. He's pissed. And her dad's pissed. You believe this shit? Not exactly a love-friendly society. And he does the outrageous. Like, what he says is outrageous. Okay? I should say some fucking, controversial shit right now, but I'm not going to. He says, you're one of these rich, spoiled kids, okay, who always gets what he wants. And I didn't always. I lived on a fucking farm, on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Okay, I'm 16 years old. At the time, I'm not driving. I don't drive a Mercedes. I won't drive till I'm 19. I'll drive an Infiniti that my parents basically bought two of them at the same time, gave me one of them after my mom drove it for a while, used Infiniti, but it looked new and looked good, right? But that was later. I, by no stretch of the imagination, as a teenager, the last 4 or 5 Christmases, before that were like lousy as hell. When my parents bought me a video game system, maybe when I was 11 or 12 or something, so the last like 3, 4 Christmases were bad, right? Well, when I was 11 or 12, those Christmases weren't that bad. I had a lot of toys when I was younger, but as a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, those Christmases sucked a dick. I was a miserable motherfucker. You see what I'm saying? He had the nerve to tell me, okay? The guy who they were just running a psyop on, covertly drugging, okay? That I'm some kind of spoiled rich piece of humperdink fucking buttercrumb bitch, fucking shit of a fucking bitch, and I should have told him that. But I'm fucking, I'm tripping. I'm like, man, no, this is the worst case scenario. I'll never talk to her. I'm tripping like that. I'm trying to play it off. I'm trying not to, be hurting too bad. Trying to articulate, trying to get it over with. And he says the unthinkable. First he says, you never guess how old she is. I was right. She was my class. She's fucking her shape of her body. Maybe she's a little older. Hey, I don't know what the fuck he's just trying to confuse me or something. But then motherfucker says, guess what race she is? You can't make this shit up. Motherfucker said, guess what race she is? Okay, first of all, fuck you. Okay? Guess who the fuck I am? Secondly, motherfucker had me guessing races. And according to him, I never got it right. I'm like, she's Colombian, she's Spanish, she's Mexican, she's Italian. I'm going through all kinds of every race I can think of and shit. Maybe she's Brazilian, any country I can think of that looks anything like her. You can't make this shit up. Would you be pissed off about it? Would you feel betrayed by society and her family? Why does society let monsters like that interfere with true love? With Jesus choosing his wife? Why didn't they give me my rightful place? All you churches who are aware of who I am, okay? None of you had a fucking thing to say. While they're running a sop on me and breaking my heart. So there's some other chicks I had a crush on lightweight and they kind of rejected me too. There was a blonde chick who liked me, who was pretty hot, and they did some mind control there. I messed with her at the park by the library, and she said some outrageous shit. She's like, no, fuck, since this is my story and it's such an important story, I'm going to tell this personal kind of detail. So she said, I was a horny kid by that time. She said, if you strip naked right now, I'll have sex with you right here and now, but otherwise I'm not going to have sex with you. Did not do that. Arguably should have done it. No, I'm just joking. It's not cool to do that stuff. But, I did not do that. Okay? And they did some mind control there. And I said some funny ass shit. And, eventually she got mad at me. But that was different. I did not say funny shit to Maria. It was all understandable. But to that blonde chick, I fucked up there. Shout out to that chick. She was dating some kind of Satanist at the time. And I was actually dating someone else at the time, but that someone, I kept breaking up with her. And she knew, if I remember the timeline correctly, that I had a crush on Maria. In fact, I told my girlfriend at the time, was an Indian girl, who was like a year younger than me, year and a half. I said, call Maria. And I think that was before things go south. So I actually had my girlfriend call her to show her that I'm not some crazy stalker, to explain it to her, because I was having trouble articulating myself. Now, that arguably was too far, but it's really smart, because she's the type of female who's good at talking to people. It was her idea, okay? And she said, if you're in love with someone else, I want you to be with that person. We had that whole little discussions. I leveled with her. You see what I'm saying? And I'd already broken up with her many times, and she didn't really try hard to be a woman. She was like a little sister kind of troublemaker, and her favorite song was Hoochie Mama. It was not cool, but her mom was a gynecologist, strangely enough, and she was from a nicer family than Maria. Okay, so it's almost like that was my angle, but it was really her personality, this particular harmless little Indian girl personality that I was going to try to use to reason with this female that I was madly in love with. Okay. So when things go south, at that time I contemplated suicide, and there's some events that took place that I want to get into. A lot of, my anger seriously increased, and I was eventually going to be sent to reform school at the same. I was 16 years old. That's when I won the martial art trophy. That's when the Maria incident happened. That's when I also clashed with some of the local Crips and their allies at that time, okay, over an incident with marijuana. It's this long story for another day. And eventually my parents took me out of that school, okay. The principal knew about it, the police knew about it. It was a big controversy. And so and there was incidents there where basically a bunch of the Crips and their allies and the black people hung out with them. Some of them had thrown change at these white skater groups over another marijuana incident that had nothing to do with me. And this guy who had a Confederate flag with a Tweety bird on it, he came and I thought he was a little bit courageous, but I thought he was stupid at the same time, right? He came by himself, tried to sit down at the table. I think that's what led up to the change throwing. Then the police came, and one big police officer stood between our groups, right, acting like he's like, I'm the solo, police officer, I'm the man, trying to muscle up on a bunch of high school kids, trying to feel tough, trying to profile. That had occurred. So a bunch of incidents like this had occurred during that same year when I'm 16 years old, right, during that year window. So eventually, I'm doing all this off the top of my head, mind you. Eventually, I leave and I get sent to summer school, fucking reform school. And there's a whole nother story with that. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I went to reform school, got kicked out of that, went to behavior modification program in Idaho, okay, where I carved a broken heart on the back of my forearm under my wrist while they're pretending I'm mentally ill and all this. But it's an understandable series of events that had really provoked anger and kind of heartbreak and reckless behavior. And none of the behavior was that reckless. I didn't steal my parents' car or something. I didn't, beat someone halfway to death. It was just like leaving home without permission, being very angry, fits of rage, what have you. Okay? Drinking, smoking weed. That's what I got sent to reform school for. And I got kicked out of reform school for smuggling in marijuana twice. And so then I get taken to the, I get taken through Compton and Long Beach by this person who was going to escort me in handcuffs and he did just that. He was from Compton to behavior modification program by Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Okay, and so I don't want to go off too much on it, but that heartbreak is key here with the on the back of my wrist, and this will start years and years of conflict and speculation about what was my behavioral issue, and I would argue heartbreak. Okay, and it was also, that's a story for another day. I think I went over that in the story already. I want to stick to the topic here. We've gone way over time already. So, then I seen this female named Leanna from the school in Santa Cruz, and I gave her, I actually approached her like a man. I'm with a bunch of Crips, right? You know what I'm saying? And we're going through Santa Cruz. They're hauling out a bunch of chicks, whoop-de-whoop. I stepped to this female like a man. If I got the timeline correct, that was a time when I was with a bunch of Crips there, like 4 or 5 of them, and I was with my little brother and some Norteño homies. Shout out to all those dudes. I was there in Santa Cruz. I approach her like a man on my own. I break off from the group. I see her, whoop-de-whoop. She's by the arcade there, and I walk right up to her. Right, it's Neptune's Kingdom is what it's called, and Neptune is a counterpart for Poseidon. Okay, I walk right up to her, And I say, hey, what's up? When I was in high school, I had a crush on you, whoop de whoop. Okay, and I asked her about events that occurred there, and she didn't really know about, because it was actually a race riot between whites and Hispanics on Cinco de Mayo or something like that after I left. Basically, some guy, some Hispanic gentleman, Mexican gentleman, was waving a Mexican flag in front of a bunch of white cowboys. There's actually cowboys in the school because it's partly a rural town, and partly some of these people are from San Jose. Part of it is the city-ish, right? Okay, it's a small town. And so they had jumped that guy. The Cowboys jumped that guy, and the story goes that the guy who led the charge against him, he lost a family member in the Alamo or some event like this that has to do with that, right? And so then there's a huge fight, and a bunch of people got black eyes and bloody noses, and they said that the injuries were evenly spread out. I don't know. I'm gonna guess they're right about that. And based on the numbers of people and my experiences when I was there, and the estimations I gave, okay. And there's a story around that too, right? They had hinted that something like that was going to come, and they told me to stay out of it. It's a story for another day. Okay. And I had left before that either way, and of course, things were very racially divided. There's several different groups of Hispanics. Some were more kind of Mexican nationals, perhaps, without necessarily being Serranos. Not that I identified. I didn't identify any Serranos. There was Norteño type of groups. There was handball guys, what have you. Okay. So, and there was several groups of white people, right? The football players, mostly white. There was, skaters. There was, rockers and goths and various groups of, populars or whatever, right? So it's very racially divided, and I hate that about society, that they break down on those lines. But anyway, that was during the 90s. Mind you, I was class of 99. So, yeah, with the Leanna thing, so I gave her my number, or I took her number, and this is another thing that's strange. So she supposedly didn't have a phone at her house or some shit. Or maybe she wasn't allowed to receive calls. So she gave me her friend's phone number. She said, no, she's cool. She'll understand. So I call her the first time. She's like, who's that? Who's it? Pretend like she didn't know who the fuck it was, right? And then she's like, oh, I know who you're talking about, as the call got dragged on, right? And then she said, yeah, okay, I'll tell you called. I called again. Boom, missed her again, because she said she's always there. And she said, oh, yeah, she wants me to tell you to stop calling here. Okay? If that had treachery involved in it, fuck them too. You see what I'm saying? Am I supposed to forgive? No. It is fucking the time of judgment. I sit in the seat of judgment. And even if I wasn't Jesus, okay, you're only supposed to forgive under certain circumstances. Go back to Luke 17:3. It's a long story. I don't want to make it about that. But if your brother sins, rebuke him. If they repent, forgive them. If they don't repent, then you keep rebuking them, right? You're not forgiving them. God's not forgiving them. I'm sure as hell not forgiving them if they fucking are an unrepentant sinner. If you're an unrepentant sinner, fuck you. You see what I'm saying? That clears it up. And sometimes you have to say it that way. I know I probably sound weird right now. I've been fumed. But that's that. I'm going to have to end it there. I wanted to touch on my experiences in Gilroy. Okay? But I'm going to end this with this Proverbs again to help you understand why I'm right. Proverbs 28:10. Whoever leads the upright along an evil path will fall into their own trap, but the blameless will receive a good inheritance. So we're going to have to get into the Gilroy experiences and what I said about females. What I wrote down maybe 12 points, 10 points about how males and females go wrong. And I've gone over this in other videos. I've made playlists. I've really gone deep into the romantic justice. I take a lot of pride in having an accurate and fair and logical and just and right stance on romantic justice, and in emphasizing it and making it clear what is rape by deception and what isn't, and trying to help people understand why all their dating practices and cultures are wrong, why their marriages, except for my parents, are wrong. Okay, I went the distance. I know this could hurt a lot of feelings, but justice is justice. The truth hurts. In fact, even in the word hurts, you have the word truth scrambled. And the T is the feminine suffix. Go back to my video where you see the word play, right? The H one, and the one after that, I believe, is the one about the T, where it explains that it's the feminine suffix. So you got the letter T, and you got truth. So you got hurt, T. T, when you live in a society with a feminine suffix, where they refuse to be a man, virtue means man, and obey God through me, okay, and be morally precise, okay, people are being hurt. And pointing that out can hurt people's feelings because they don't want to admit that they're abusing people. The water of life is not the D-E Nile. The E is the effeminate, emasculate, the E words, evil, evil, what have you. Okay? The true water of God is the alpha nail. The alpha that nailed it. and the idea that Christ super on the idea of the false Christ crucified on the cross is superimposed on the actual anointed one, the top martial arts ever possible, the Son of God. And again, I tell you, David and Goliath proves my point. Okay, and if for those of you who want to play stupid and live a fairy life, if you think the top martial arts ever possible isn't the Son of God, then who the fuck is he? Who am I? What am I then? I am that I am, what I am. The Lord is a warrior, God's son, the top martial arts ever possible. I've proven the miracles are figurative. It's a story for another day. I went way over time, so we'll end it there. So really quickly, I'd like to say that, in regards to that Italian person, I don't care that he's Italian. I just happen to be bringing that up. And stay tuned. We have a lot of good stuff coming in this playlist. We have Live Oak Stories, Morgan Hill, California. Gilroy Stories, Gilroy, California. It's a very gang-related small town here in Northern California. We have some good stories come up. Stay tuned.